and welcome back to the Voices of the Vic podcast. Today, your host is me, Caity, and I'm joined by Scott from the Belgian Football Podcast. How are you, Scott?
I'm good, Caity. Thanks for the invite. It's a delight to be here.
No worries. So today we're talking about, he hasn't officially signed at the moment of this recording, but we've seen pictures of him in a Watford shirt, so it's looking promising. But we're talking about Giorgi Chakvetadze. So yeah, we'll just get straight into it. So what can we expect from a player like him in the Vic?
I think the first thing to say about Giorgi Chakvetadze, or Chak as some people call him, and is probably easier to pronounce. So you'll get used to that in your end in due course, I'm sure. I think the first thing to kind of highlight about Chak is this is a classic example of a young player, and he is still young. He's still only 23, who in recent years has kind of been blighted by a couple of really bad injuries and is essentially looking to kind of get his career back on track. So he comes to Ghent in Belgium back in 2017 initially. And his first season in Belgium is okay, actually. Obviously it takes time for players to kind of acclimatise when they're coming from a different footballing culture. In this case, kind of coming from Georgian football, obviously. The Ghent scouts saw something interesting in him, bring him to Belgium in 2017, and his first season there, he actually does okay. I think I was pulling out the numbers earlier on today. I think he's had he scored 8 goals in 81 appearances in total for Ghent, but that's been over a number of years because it's been disrupted because of injuries. His troubles really started for him back in sort of 2019. He got quite a bad knee injury that basically took him out for the entire season. I think he missed around 34 games that season. And then he gets a recurrence of that injury the following year, which meant he missed 41 games. Even so, for 2 years of his time at Ghent, they've kind of been a write-off. And I think a decision was taken, obviously, that he needed to get fit. He needed to get his confidence back, and in that situation, obviously, he's sent out on loan. He's sent out to Hamburg in Germany. Doesn't do great there. 6 month spell. The short niggling injuries that are still a bit disruptive for him. So he only makes 12 appearances there, scores 1, nothing to write home about, comes back to Ghent, obviously, and they managed to get him a new loan. He goes out to Slovan Bratislava, where he spent the whole of last season. And the good news here is this is when he starts to get a bit fit, and there's a degree of consistency there. So he played 47 times for them last year, including a few appearances in Europe as well. And this is really, last season is the first time probably in about at least 3 years, actually, that he's had a consistent season of any kind at all. And the main thing was just to stay fit, which he managed to do. He came back to Ghent in the summer, and I think there's a point in any player's career when they've come back from injuries like this, where you've been out of the parent club set up for such a long time that there probably is no kind of coming back really for you. So I think there was a feeling at the Ghent end that his future lay in a successful loan period elsewhere. The recruitment team at Watford have obviously had a look at him last season and felt here's an attacking midfielder with potential, because he's managed to kind of prove that he is getting back to full fitness now, which there must have been doubts around. A 2-season spell like that is pretty disastrous for most players. But as I was saying, he's still only 23, so he's got time in his side yet to prove that he can, show the potential that I think Ghent originally saw in him, although it won't be in Belgium now, I don't think. So the recruitment team at Watford have kind of come in, they've had a look at him. I think he obviously fulfills something in terms of his profile that they're looking for as well. to fit into their system. He's the attractive thing about him is he's an attacking midfielder who can play in a number of positions. His primary position is on the left wing, but he can play in the centre of midfield or on the left of midfield as well. I think he personally prefers playing in the centre as an attacking midfielder, and that's where he played for most of his time with Slovan Bratislava as well. And in truth, this is a very good move for him, actually, to get a move at this level with that kind of injury history. Actually, is pretty good going, I think. So I suspect he'll be looking forward to this as kind of a clean slate for him.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a huge clear out of our players, and the fact that he can play lots of positions is always good because it means, we've got a number of places where he can be. And I think, he is young, but do you think, because we've had players who always hold back when they've got like injury records and they don't want to, do it again. And do you think that the injury record is a concern, especially because the deal, I'm pretty sure it's only a loan? Do you think it's a bit of an issue because he could not be to his potential?
Well, I think the deal's been quite well constructed, from what I understand, to kind of benefit all parties. You're right; it's a loan with an option to buy, and from a Gent perspective, this is quite good business because obviously he's a player who doesn't really have a future in Belgium anymore. He goes to a new club. He's given that opportunity because it is a loan to prove himself. If it goes well for him, then Watford can exercise that purchase option, which I think is round about 2 million. So it's very, very modest. And if that's the case, then Gent benefit from a future resale percentage as well if things go, really well for him. So I think this is a deal that kind of suits everybody. As I was saying, I think the recruitment team at Vicarage Road have obviously seen something in terms of his profile that fits. He's a Georgian international as well. It's worth underlining that. This is a player who does have, despite his young age still, and a bad injury record. Let's be honest about that. There's a couple of bad injuries, and I think he's probably hoping that he's had his fill of injuries for quite some time. Because bad injuries like that hit your confidence. And I think another factor as well in perhaps him leaving Gent is a feeling on Gent's part that perhaps his work rate wasn't what they would like it to be as well. And in a way, this doesn't reflect negatively upon Chak, because I think if you're coming back from injuries like that, psychologically, you can expect a player, I think, to hold back a little bit. But the encouraging thing, as I was saying, is, he had a good season last year at Slovan Bratislava. Aside from his output, he's obviously not scoring or providing the level of assists that anybody would like him to, but his main thing was to prove his fitness. And I think last season he was able to get through a full season, put in a good number of appearances without a breakdown or recurrence of that major injury or anything else. So he has made progress in the last year, and this is where getting this move, as I was saying, actually is a really good move for him. And I think he probably thought getting a move at this level was probably beyond him a bit at the moment. I suspect he thought he was going to be looking at maybe going back to Slovan or somewhere else in a smaller league in Europe to kind of continue to prove that fitness and hopefully up the output to attract bigger suitors. But I think his agent actually has kind of engineered a really good opportunity for him here.
Yeah, no, he sounds like he could be a really key asset if everything goes to plan. So you say that he can play a lot of roles, so that's always good. What would you say like his best position would be, where he's like flourished the most?
Well, I think he prefers to play in the centre of midfield as an attacking midfielder. I think, he prefers to have the freedom to kind of go forward and sort of express himself. I think that's what attracted Gent to him originally. A young, aggressive, hungry attacking midfielder is the reason they bought him, really. And initially at Ghent, he looked fairly promising, I think, before the injuries came along, and then obviously everything changes and his whole perspective changes. So I think he's obviously been bought as an offensive player. And I think to get the best out of him, probably because of his confidence issues, which obviously are improving, because he was consistently fit last year. You would imagine that, he would want to play in his favoured position somewhere in the centre of midfield, but actually he is primarily a left midfielder. So he can play on the left, he can play in the centre, or he can play in the pocket slightly further forward as well. So it really depends on where they see him playing. They might not know that yet, actually. That's the thing. I think they're probably keeping an open mind about this. Let him come in, see how he does. I haven't seen too much of you guys, so I don't know the familiar, what the system's been like recently, or where he might fit into that.
System yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that that this signing is an indication of them maybe having an idea of how they might want to play. These sorts of things are ordinarily part of discussion when a player comes in as well. So he's probably been given not necessarily some assurances, but there will have been some discussion about how he might fit into the bigger picture and the project there at Vicarage Road and where he fits into that kind of this coming season as well.
Yeah, no, that's really promising to hear, that he could be a part of an even bigger project, because that's something we've really lacked recently, especially. Do you have any idea like what role he might play in and around the team? I know he's quite young, but do you know what he would be like around the players in the club?
Well, I think it'll take him a period of readjustment again. It was interesting that during his time at Ghent, he didn't learn English. Which isn't unusual when a player comes in from a culture that's very different like that, coming from Georgian football to Belgium. And in Belgium, most of the clubs speak English while they're at work anyway. Certainly the clubs based in Flanders, which is where Ghent are, a lot of the players there will be bilingual regardless of where they come from. And the thing with Chak that made him stand out a little bit was that he didn't learn English in his time at Ghent. And as far as I understand it, I was talking to somebody in the last few days actually about him who said that as far as he's aware, he still doesn't speak fluent English yet. So that could become an interesting hurdle for him initially. And will be something that obviously he'll have to improve if he's going to do well there. But having said that, I think as long as he concentrates on the football, that's the most important thing. The language barrier is something that can be surmounted, even if he doesn't, speak English as his first language. But I would certainly highlight that as being kind of something to kind of look out for. I think he's quite shy. As an individual off the football pitch, you wouldn't necessarily know that on it. He's quite an aggressive attacking midfielder who, incidentally, he's got quite a good disciplinary record for a player who likes to put himself about a bit. Belgian football's quite physical generally, and you need that side to your game, and playing in the championship, he's going to have to be able to handle himself as well, and obviously that's a long season, the championship, so it's kind of interesting that he's come off the back of these injuries to a club where he's hoping to relaunch his career, and he's going to have to prove himself again physically over a long season as well. The championship's longer than a lot of seasons elsewhere. So actually, he's asking a lot of himself in that sense, and the fact he's being ambitious like that is probably kind of quite good for him. It'll be interesting to see whether he can feature regularly or whether it's kind of a slow build for him. So we'll be keeping an eye on that ourselves just to see how he does.
I think I can see him kind of being regular because we have like no players. I mean, the season's starting next Saturday, and we have about 21 first team players. That's like just enough for a team and a bench. So I can kind of see the people coming in being like people who they know are ready, people who can play instantly, and then obviously, yeah, build it up. But it was interesting that you talk about how Belgian football is very physical, because one of the questions was, how do you think he would adapt to championship football? Do you think like
Yeah, I
him
mean,
being
yeah, I mean, I think there's a
into
player
that physical?
technically who has the ability to kind of play at that level, I think. And it's very interesting that he's got this opportunity, I think. Because I was saying earlier, I think he probably thought getting a move to this level at this stage might have just been slightly beyond him. He might have needed another season to prove himself. But my feeling about it is the recruitment team at Vicarage would have probably had a closer look at him, and actually talking to his agent, they've decided to take a bit of a chance on him. He has age on his side, as I was saying, still, despite the bad injuries, and he is a Georgian international. So I think he's coming to a level where physically, if he can stay fit, he'll prove himself, hopefully, to the extent that he'll be able to get back into the international setup as well, which I think longer term will be very much part of his plans, because he was thought of as kind of one of the rising stars of Georgian football up until those injuries. He was thought of very highly of there, so he's got a little bit to prove still there. And I think coming to a club like Watford at this level is probably a really good move for him. And if he can stay fit, he's got the prize of getting back into the international setup and potentially of Premier League football, or another move elsewhere at a level that is higher than Ghent. Should that happen? I mean, Watford have obviously, been a bit up and down in recent seasons, and I hope that they can kind of come straight back up. And I think he'll want to be part of that. He'll see this as his target very much will be stay fit, do well, and hopefully there's Premier League football there. However that happens at some point over the next year or so.
That's really promising to hear, that he'll just get his head down, get stuck in, and hopefully be rewarded with what we all can hope of promotion. But yeah, we'll have to see. Is there any other things we can expect from him that you would want to point out?
I just hope he stays fit for you, because, as I was saying, he had everything going for him before those injuries kind of came along. And I think he's a player who could do well at this level. And as I was saying, the main thing is it looks certainly from what I've seen, that those major injury worries seem to kind of have receded. He's had a full season behind him now, where he was playing regularly, and that's a very encouraging sign. Actually, he'll have got enough of his confidence back over the last year to come to a club the size of Watford and go in there and sort of express himself. So, for any Watford fans looking at that injury record and going, don't know about this, I think he's earned his right for this move, having proved himself, consistently last season. Like I was saying, the thing to watch out for, and the thing that I think will be expected of him now, is that he goes and produces something in terms of his output, scores a few for himself and starts to create opportunities for his teammates, because I think that's the one thing that that's been missing from his game wherever he's been, and that's probably what he'll be looking to do now.
Yeah, no, it all sounds really good. We're very excited to have him and lots of new people come in, because it really feels like the start of a rebuild. And if we can focus around young players, all that does is just give us more talent for the future. Cool, well, I guess that's everything. So thank you so much, Scott.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for the invite, Kaity.
And we will look after him, hopefully. And hopefully he stays fit. Perfect. Thanks, guys, for watching. And we'll see you in the next podcast.